That was Love Her Madly, one of the last singles released before the death of lead vocalist Jim Morrison. That was an event that shocked everyone, fans at any rate. Did it shock you guys?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Billy. That was like losing your brother, losing a member of the family. It was an absolute shock to me. I was just devastated by it.
John, what were your memories of that time?
Same thing, but I have to say that in the back of my mind, I kind of, knowing how hard Jim partied, he was either going to go out quick or live to be a 80-year-old Irish drunk. So there you have it.
Wow. Let's make some more calls. Maybe someone else has got some questions about that, too. We have in our studios here Ray Manzarek and John Densmore of The Doors. They're calling out to Tammy, who listens to Classic Call in Scottsdale, Arizona, on KSLX.
Hi, is Tammy there?
This is Tammy.
Hey, Tammy, Ray Manzarek from The Doors. And?
John Densmore.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Just fine. How about you?
Fine.
All right.
I'm excited.
Oh, good.
Okay.
You sound it, too. I love your voice. You got a great voice.
Thanks.
So you have a question for us?
Well, I have a couple of them. I'm sure you've probably heard this one before, but I just can't help but ask.
Go ahead.
How do you guys feel about the rumors that run around about Jim Morrison not really dying?
Well, I'll give you a quick rundown on the story as far as I know concerning his death. And a sealed coffin. I don't know if you know about the sealed coffin, but when the guy who was our manager at the time flew to Paris after he heard that Jim had died, I thought it was just a rumor because those Paul is dead kind of rumors. Jim had been supposedly died 3 or 4 times, automobile accidents. He'd come walking into a party, and Jim fell out of a building, and he died. And, nothing ever happened to him. So all of a sudden, a phone call comes saying Jim's dead. I said, baloney. I don't believe it. So this guy, our manager, said, I think it's serious, and I'm flying over there. I said, okay, fine. Well, fly over and check it out and see what happens. Well, he called me about 3 days later and said, well, we buried him. I said, my God, you mean it was true? He said, yep. I said, well, how did he look? He said, well, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know how he looked? I mean, what do you mean you don't know? He said, it was a sealed coffin. I never saw his body. I said, you're telling me you put a coffin in the ground in Paris and you never saw Jim Morrison? He said, no, I never saw the body. But he was in there. I know he was in there. I said, well, how did he die? What happened? He said, I don't know. The death certificate's in French. I couldn't read it. I don't know what happened. So that's all I know. As far as I know, Jim Morrison is buried in Père Lachaise, beautiful cemetery in Paris. But I must say that if anybody could have pulled off a stunt like filling a coffin with maybe 150 pounds of sand and getting it buried in Paris and disappearing from the face of the earth, Jim Morrison was the guy who could pull that off.
Well, that's the same way I kind of feel.
Yeah.
If somebody was to do it, I think he could.
Yeah, he's the only guy that could have done it in rock and roll, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Tammy, thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on Classic Call with us today. Ray and John, I'll bet you a lot of these folks are probably wondering by now, how do I get people like The Doors, Lynyrd Skynyrd, the Doobie Brothers, Eric Burdon, Frank Zappa, Steve Miller, or Joe Cocker to call me with a Classic Call? Well, all you have to do is call us at 213-461-CALL. That's 213-461-CALL. Leave your name, your phone number, and the question you'd like to ask, and you may be getting a Classic Call from us very soon. Now, when we come back, more Classic Calls, and we'll find out why John and Ray feel their music has survived through the decades. What do you guys feel is the reason for The Doors' continuing popularity through the years? You sell as many albums today as most groups sell at the peak of their careers.
Yeah. What do you think?
I always say it's the drumming, Billy.
That was the drummer speaking, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know. Maybe it has something to... Well, let's see. Early in the program, you said it's sex, death, and...
Reptiles.
Maybe that melting pot thing and trying to find our own uniqueness, not having a bass player and that sort of thing. Maybe that has something to do with it. I
think the Doors were touching on universal themes back in the 60s, post-World War II, last half of the 20th century of America, of the world, and what it means to be alive, and who are you, where did you come from, where are you going, those important questions. What does it mean to be alive? I don't think it's any different today than it was then. I think what we're doing is reaching a new generation. Kids who are coming of age, 16, 17, 18, are starting to ask the same questions that we were asking, and I don't think those questions are any different today than they were then. You've got to know who you are, what is your place on this planet, and I think they find in the Doors' music that sense of questioning, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons that we're still talking about Jim Morrison and the Doors today.
And it's available on compact discs today, so
yeah,
at
well,
least
state-of-the-art fidelity, that's for
right.
sure, yeah.
Now, we have a song coming up from 1967. Also, in that same year, the rock musical Hair opened. The first issue of Rolling Stone magazine, which included, of all things, a Roach clip, was published in San Francisco. And the Doors performed their #1 hit, Light My Fire, on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I understand before the show, Ed had asked Jim Morrison to omit the line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." He agreed, I hear. And then what did he do?
Well, we looked at each other after Ed left and said, "You can't say higher on national television." We said, "Come on, what do you mean you can't, you know, well, sorry, boys, you can't say higher on national television. Change the word." Jim said, "Fine, we'll change it." So then after he left the room, we said, "Well, listen, that's ridiculous. Let's just go ahead and say higher. No one is going to censor it or anything." So we went ahead and did it the way we've, had done it 1,000 times. After the show, the program director came back and said, "You said higher on national television." I'd never seen a man whine like this at us. It wasn't Ed Sullivan, thank God, it was a program director. And he said, "You promised you weren't going to say it." And I said, "Well, listen, we did it that way 1,000 times. We were so nervous because we were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and it's such an honor that, well, we just forgot. We blanked out." And he said, "You promised you'll never work the Ed Sullivan Show again." And sure enough, we never did. It was one time and one time only.
Instead, the Doors went on to reach enormous heights of success that even you hadn't imagined, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Jim Morrison was firmly establishing himself as the Lizard King, and the band was steadily producing gold albums as well as becoming one of the biggest live musical attractions in the world. And you were also experiencing success with this hit on Classic Call.